What happens when a CEO steps out of the boardroom and into the shadows of his own warehouse, only to find a worker scavenging for scraps in the trash? Michael Bennett stood at the window of his 20th floor office, the city sprawling beneath him like a map of his ambitions. At 45, he'd built Bennett Logistics from a single rented warehouse to a network of 12 across the state, hauling everything from electronics to groceries for clients who demanded speed and reliability. A decade ago, he was the one loading boxes, sweet-talking suppliers, and driving delivery vans through midnight snowstorms. Now, his days were filled with spreadsheets, board meetings, and the sterile hum of corporate life. But lately, something felt rotten. Even in it gnawed at him like a splinter he couldn't pull. The reports on his desk told a grim story. Customer complaints were spiking. Delayed shipments, damaged goods, rude drivers. Employee turnover was at an all-time high, with warehouses bleeding workers faster than HR could hire replacements. Yet, the revenue was steady, and regional managers insisted everything was under control. "Just growing pains," one had written in an email. Michael wasn't buying it. He thought of his father, Jack, a warehouse worker who'd come home with calloused hands and stories of bosses who docked pay for minor mistakes. Jack's struggles had driven Michael to start Bennett Logistics, vowing to build a company that treated workers with dignity. Now, those values seemed to be slipping away. The Riverside warehouse, 200 miles from headquarters, was the worst offender. Complaints from clients pointed to consistent delays, while anonymous Glassdoor reviews described a toxic hellhole run by supervisors who ruled through fear. Michael's regional manager claimed it was exaggerated, but the numbers didn't lie. Riverside's efficiency was tanking, and turnover was double the company average. He needed the truth, and he wasn't going to find it in a polished report. So, he made a decision that would have raised eyebrows in any boardroom. He was going undercover. Bennett Logistics wasn't just a business. It was a promise to his father, to his workers, to himself. The logistics industry was cutthroat, with mega corporations and e-commerce giants squeezing smaller players like his. Rising fuel costs and client demands for faster delivery stretched margins thin. If Riverside's problems spread, the company could lose contracts, maybe even collapse. But more than that, Michael couldn't stomach the idea of his warehouses becoming the kind of place his father had endured, a place where workers were numbers, not people. To pull this off, he needed a plan. With 12 warehouses, some employees might recognize him from company videos or annual meetings. He couldn't just walk in as a random hire. So, he called Ellie Morgan, his HR director and one of the few people he trusted completely. Ellie was whip-smart, fiercely loyal, and didn't shy away from calling out nonsense a rarity in corporate circles. "Undercover?" Ellie said, her voice skeptical over the phone. "You're serious, Michael?" "As a heart attack," he replied, pacing his office. "I need to see what's happening at Riverside, Ellie, not what the managers want me to see." She sighed. "You're not exactly low profile. Your face is on the website, for God's sake. And you walk like you own the place, which you know you do." Michael chuckled, but his tone was firm. "That's why I need you. Set me up as a temp worker, someone no one will question. I'll handle the rest." Ellie relented, and they crafted a persona. Sam Turner, a 38-year-old temporary worker from a staffing agency, hired for a short-term stint at Riverside. Ellie would slip Sam's name into the payroll system, bypassing the usual checks, and ensure the cover story held up. To sell the disguise, Michael shaved his neat beard into rough stubble, traded his tailored suits for a faded hoodie and worn jeans, and swapped his contacts for thick-rimmed glasses. He practiced slouching, softening his commanding posture. In the mirror, he looked like a stranger, not the CEO, but a man who'd seen hard days. His chest tightened with a mix of nerves and anticipation. For the first time in years, he felt the same raw determination he'd had when he opened his first warehouse. Riverside was chosen deliberately, far from headquarters. Its staff had never met Michael in person, and its problems were the most severe. He drove there in a borrowed pickup, leaving his Audi in the garage. The warehouse loomed on the outskirts of a gritty industrial park, its concrete facade stained by years of neglect. The parking lot was half empty, littered with cigarette butts and broken pallets. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the screech of forklifts zipping recklessly through narrow aisles. Boxes teetered in haphazard stacks, some crushed under their own weight. Michael's stomach sank. This wasn't just a poorly run warehouse. It was chaos. The hiring process was a joke. A shift supervisor, a thick-set man named Greg Sullivan, gave him a cursory glance, handed him a scanner, and grunted, "Stick with the crew and don't screw up." No training, no safety briefing, just a pat on the back and a shove into the fray. Michael clocked in as Sam Turner, his name tag pinned to his hoodie, and joined a team sorting inventory in a dimly lit corner of the warehouse. That's where he met Noah Carter. Noah was young, barely in his early 20s, with tired eyes and a uniform that hung loose on his lean frame. Despite his exhaustion, he moved like a machine, scanning and stacking boxes twice as fast as the others. But something was off. Noah flinched when Greg passed by, his shoulders hunching as if expecting a blow. He kept glancing at the clock, counting down to a break that seemed to matter more than it should. Michael watched, his instincts prickling. Noah wasn't just tired. He was desperate. At lunch, Michael sat near the back of the break room, a grimy space with flickering lights and a vending machine that ate quarters. Most workers unwrapped packed lunches or heated instant noodles in a battered microwave. Noah sat alone, staring at the vending machine, his hands fidgeting in his pockets. Michael pretended to check his phone, but his eyes stayed on Noah. Then it happened. Noah glanced around, ensuring no one was watching, and shuffled to a trash bin by the wall. He reached in, pulling out a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in crumpled paper. He inspected it carefully, peeling back the wrapper like it was something precious, and took a small bite, chewing slowly, his eyes darting to avoid detection. Michael's chest tightened, a mix of shock and shame washing over him. This was his company, his warehouse, and one of his workers was eating from the trash. He stood, moving quietly to Noah's side, and kept his voice low. "Hey, man, you okay?" Noah froze mid-bite, his eyes wide with panic. I wasn't stealing," he stammered, shoving the sandwich into his pocket. "It was thrown away, I swear." Michael's stomach churned. "You don't have food?" Noah hesitated, then shrugged, his voice barely audible. "Payday's Friday. Just gotta make it till then." Michael sat beside him, keeping his tone gentle. "You don't have money for food?" Noah let out a hollow laugh, avoiding Michael's gaze. "Not after rent. Not after everything. It's fine. I've done worse." Michael's fists clenched under the table. This wasn't just a worker struggling. This was a failure of his company, his leadership. Before he could say more, Greg's voice boomed across the room. "Carter! Break's over! Move it!" Noah stuffed the sandwich deeper into his pocket and hurried off, his head down. Michael watched him go, his mind racing. Noah's desperation wasn't an isolated incident. It was a symptom of something deeply wrong. The chaotic warehouse, Greg's dismissive attitude, the lack of training, it all pointed to a rot Michael had let fester. He'd come to Riverside to find answers, and now he had one. His company was failing its people. Tomorrow, he'd start digging deeper, talking to Noah, watching Greg, and gathering the evidence he needed to act. This wasn't just about Riverside anymore. It was about keeping the promise he'd made to his father, to build a company that didn't break people, but lifted them up. Michael Bennett woke with the image of Noah Carter burned into his mind, a young man, barely out of his teens, eating a discarded sandwich from the trash in the break room of Michael's own warehouse. As Sam Turner, the temporary worker with a fake name tag and a thrift store hoodie, Michael had come to the Riverside warehouse to uncover the truth behind customer complaints and high turnover. In one day, he'd seen enough to know the problems ran deeper than inefficiency. The chaos, the fear in workers' eyes, and Noah's quiet desperation pointed to a rot that had taken root under his watch. Today, Michael would dig further, piecing together the scope of the dysfunction and gathering the evidence he needed to act. He pulled on his worn jeans, adjusted his thick-rimmed glasses, and headed back to Riverside, his resolve as sharp as a blade. The warehouse looked no better in the gray morning light. Forklifts screeched through cluttered aisles, their drivers weaving dangerously close to teetering stacks of boxes. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of motor oil, a far cry from the polished efficiency Michael had envisioned when he founded Bennett Logistics. He clocked in, his scanner heavy in his hand, and joined a sorting crew in the loading bay. The work was grueling, lifting heavy crates, scanning barcodes, dodging pallets that seemed to appear out of nowhere. But Michael kept his focus split, one eye on the job, the other on the warehouse's underbelly. His first task was sorting electronics bound for a major retailer, working alongside a small team that included Noah Carter. Noah moved with the same frenetic energy as yesterday, scanning boxes twice as fast as the others, his oversized uniform flapping around him. But his eyes were bloodshot, and his hands trembled slightly as he worked. Michael noted the way Noah avoided Greg Sullivan, the shift supervisor, who patrolled the floor with a scowl, barking orders without lifting a finger. Todd Hayes, the other supervisor, lounged near a loading dock, scrolling through his phone while workers scrambled. The contrast was stark. Workers stretched to their limits, supervisors coasting on their power. Michael's first clue came mid-morning, when Ryan Foster, a lanky worker in his 30s, accidentally knocked over a stack of packaged goods. The boxes spilled across the floor, none damaged, but the noise drew Greg like a shark to blood. "Are you serious, Foster?" Greg stormed over, his voice echoing. "You think we've got time for your screw-ups?" Ryan scrambled to restack the boxes, his face tight. "It slipped, Greg. I'm sorry. I don't want excuses," Greg snapped. "That's coming out of your paycheck. Maybe next time you'll watch where you're going." Michael stiffened, his scanner pausing midair. "Wait, that's not right," he said, keeping his tone neutral as Sam Turner. "It was an accident. Shouldn't the company cover that?" Greg turned on him, eyes narrowing. "You got a problem, rookie? This is how it works. You break it, you pay for it. Keep your mouth shut and do your job." Ryan kept his head down, stacking boxes in silence, but Michael saw the frustration in his clenched jaw. This wasn't just bad management, it was exploitation, and it was happening in his company. He made a mental note. Docking pay for accidents wasn't just unfair, it might be illegal. He needed to confirm how widespread it was. During a brief water break, Michael approached Martha, a veteran worker with graying hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. She'd been at Riverside for 20 years, her hands calloused from decades of lifting and sorting. Michael, as Sam, offered her a bottle of water from the vending machine. "Rough day," he said, testing the waters. Martha took the bottle her eyes wary. "Rough decade, kid. You're new, so I'll give you some advice. Keep your head down and don't expect things to get better. They never do." Michael leaned against a crate, keeping his tone casual. "Seems like Greg's got everyone on edge. That normal?" Martha snorted. "Normal? That's Riverside. Greg and Todd run this place like their personal kingdom. You step out of line, your hours get cut. You complain, You're out the door. Been that way for years. Michael's chest tightened. No one's pushed back? Gone to HR? Martha gave him a pitying look. As a joke. Last guy who complained got reassigned to graveyard shifts until he quit. Trust me, kid. It's not worth it. Her words landed like a punch. Michael had built Bennett Logistics on the promise of fairness, inspired by his father's struggles under abusive bosses. To hear that his own HR system was failing workers was a betrayal of that promise. He thanked Martha and returned to work, his mind racing. He needed to talk to Noah, to understand the full extent of the supervisor's control. His chance came during lunch. The break room was as grim as ever, with workers huddled over meager meals. Noah sat alone again, this time, with a single granola bar he'd pulled from his pocket. Michael sat across from him, offering half of his sandwich. Looks like you could use this more than me, he said. Noah hesitated, then took it, his voice low. Thanks, Sam. You don't have to do that. Michael shrugged, keeping it light. No big deal. You okay? You looked rough out there. Noah's eyes flickered with something shame, maybe fear. Just tired. Long week. Michael pressed gently. I heard Greg docs pay for accidents. That happened to you? Noah's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Michael thought he wouldn't answer. Then, in a quiet voice, Noah said, Last month, a pallet tipped over. Wasn't even my fault forklift clipped it. Greg blamed me. Took half my check to cover damages. Between that and rent, I'm barely keeping my head above water. Michael's blood ran hot. You've got family to support. Noah nodded, his gaze dropping. My kid's sister, Lily. She's 14. Our parents are gone, so it's just me. That's why I can't quit, no matter how bad it gets. Michael's heart sank. Noah wasn't just struggling. He was trapped, supporting a sibling on a paycheck gutted by predatory deductions. That's not right, Michael said, his voice steady but firm. You shouldn't have to deal with that. Noah let out a bitter laugh. Doesn't matter what's right. Greg and Todd hold all the cards. You push back, they cut your hours. Or worse. Worse. Michael asked, leaning in. Noah hesitated, then lowered his voice. If you're desperate, they offer advances. Loans, they call it, but the interest is insane. You miss a payment, they dock your pay even more. I'm still paying off one from last year. Michael's fists clenched under the table. This wasn't just mismanagement. It was a racket, run by Greg and Todd within his own company. Before he could press further, the break ended, and Noah hurried back to the floor, his granola bar uneaten. That afternoon, Michael's suspicions were confirmed. While sorting crates, he overheard Greg and Todd near the loading dock. Their voices, low but careless. Payroll's getting cut again, Todd said, chuckling. Told corporate we're overstaffed, so they slashed overtime. Greg smirked. Suckers'll just work faster. And that box Foster dropped? Docked him 200. Idiot needs to learn. Michael's pulse quickened. They weren't just exploiting workers. They were lying to corporate, manipulating budgets. To line their own pockets. He needed hard evidence. That evening, as he clocked out, his phone buzzed with a text from Ellie Morgan, the HR director. Check your email. Anonymous tip about Riverside payroll. Be careful. Attached was a file detailing discrepancies, hours cut without notice, deductions labeled miscellaneous, and bonuses that never reached workers. Allie's note added, this came from a worker too scared to go public. Dig deeper. Michael sat in his borrowed pickup, the warehouse's silhouette looming in the dusk. The tip confirmed what Noah and Martha had hinted at. Greg and Todd were running a predatory system, exploiting workers' desperation while feeding corporate false reports. He opened his notebook, jotting down details. Noah's loan, Ryan's. Docked pay, Martha's warnings, the payroll file. The warehouse wasn't just failing. It was breaking people people like his father, who taught him that a job should lift you up, not grind you down. Tomorrow Michael would push harder. He'd talk to Ryan, maybe Martha again, and find a way to access the warehouse's records. Greg and Todd thought they were untouchable, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. Michael wasn't just the CEO. He was a man who'd made a promise to his father, to Noah, to every worker in that warehouse. And he was going to keep it, no matter what it took. Michael Bennett's third day at the Riverside warehouse began with a fire in his chest. As Sam Turner, the temporary worker in a worn hoodie and fake glasses, he'd spent 2 days uncovering a toxic culture that shamed him as the CEO of Bennett Logistics. The image of Noah Carter eating from the trash, Ryan Foster's docked pay for an accident, and Martha's weary warnings about a broken system had painted a grim picture. Greg Sullivan and Todd Hayes, the supervisors, weren't just mismanaging. They were exploiting workers through illegal deductions and predatory loans, all while feeding corporate false reports. Michael's notebook was filled with evidence, bolstered by an anonymous payroll tip from HR ally Ellie Morgan. Today he needed one final spark to act, something undeniable to justify suspending Greg and Todd and launching a formal investigation. He tightened his grip on his scanner, ready to end the charade. The warehouse was as chaotic as ever, with forklifts screeching and boxes teetering in precarious stacks. Michael worked in the sorting bay, scanning crates alongside Noah, whose exhaustion seemed to deepen by the hour. Noah's hands shook as he scanned barcodes, his eyes darting toward Greg, who prowled the floor like a predator. Todd lounged in the supervisor's office, visible through a grimy window, laughing at something on his phone. The air was thick with tension, workers moving like automatons to avoid Greg's wrath. Michael kept his head down, but his senses were sharp, waiting for the moment he knew was coming. It arrived just before the midday break. Noah was stacking a pallet of electronics, his movements precise despite his fatigue. A forklift, driven recklessly by another worker under pressure to meet quotas, clipped the pallet's edge. Boxes wobbled, and one toppled to the floor, its contents, headphones in plastic cases, spilling out. None were damaged, but the crash drew every eye. Noah froze, his face paling as Greg stormed over, his boots thudding. "Carter!" Greg's voice boomed, silencing the warehouse. "What the hell is this? You trying to bankrupt us?" Noah scrambled to pick up the headphones, his voice trembling. "It wasn't me, Greg. The forklift. Don't give me excuses." Greg cut him off, his face red. "This is coming out of your check, every damn cent. Maybe that'll teach you to stop screwing around." Noah's shoulders slumped, his hands pausing over the scattered boxes. "Please, Greg," he said, his voice barely audible. "I can't afford that. My sister, she needs me to—" "Your sister?" Greg sneered, stepping closer. "Cry me a river, kid. You should have thought of that before you got careless. No hours for you next week either. Maybe that'll smarten you up." Michael's blood roared in his ears. Noah's desperation, laid bare in front of the entire warehouse, was the line Greg couldn't cross. Workers watched, some averting their eyes, others whispering. Martha, stacking crates nearby, shook her head but said nothing, her skepticism etched in her frown. Ryan Foster, at a neighboring station, clenched his fists but stayed silent, fear holding him back. Michael set his scanner down, his decision made. This ended now. He walked toward Greg, his steps deliberate. "That's enough," he said, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the warehouse's hum. Greg spun toward him, eyes narrowing. "You again, rookie? Get back to your station before I dock your pay too." Michael didn't flinch. He reached for his glasses, pulling them off slowly, then unpinned his Sam Turner name tag and set it on a nearby crate. The warehouse seemed to hold its breath. "I'm not Sam Turner," he said, His gaze locked on Greg. "I'm Michael Bennett, the owner of this company." A stunned silence fell. Noah's mouth fell open, the headphones forgotten in his hands. Ryan's eyes widened, his fists unclenching. Martha straightened, her skepticism shifting to shock. Workers craned their necks, murmuring. Greg's face drained of color, his scowl replaced by a slack-jawed stare. Todd, drawn by the commotion, stepped out of the office, his phone dangling. In his hand, "What the?" He started, then froze as he saw Michael. Michael stepped forward, his voice steady but laced with steel. "I've been here 3 days, watching how you run this warehouse. I've seen you dock pay for accidents that aren't workers' fault. I've heard about your advances loans that trap people like Noah in debt. I've got payroll, records showing you've been cutting hours and lying to corporate about overtime. You've turned this place into something I'm ashamed to call mine." Greg's mouth worked, but no words came. Todd tried to recover, his voice shaky. "Mr. Bennett, you don't understand. We're just trying to keep things moving. By exploiting my employees?" Michael cut him off, his eyes narrowing. "By making Noah eat out of the trash because he can't afford food. Save it. I've heard enough." Noah looked down, his cheeks flushing with shame, but Michael gave him a reassuring nod. Martha watched, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. Ryan stepped closer, as if testing the new reality. Michael turned back to Greg and Todd. "You're suspended, effective immediately, pending a full HR investigation. Hand over your keys and leave now." Greg's face reddened, his hands balling into fists. "You can't just do this. I've been here 8 years. You think this place runs without us?" "I know it will," Michael said, his voice ice cold. "Keys, now." Todd fumbled for his keys, dropping them into Michael's outstretched hand, his face pale. Greg hesitated, his jaw working, then yanked his keys from his belt and slapped them down. "This is a mistake," he growled, grabbing his bag. "You'll see." Michael pulled out his phone, dialing security. "Get to Riverside. Escort 2 supervisors out." As Greg and Todd stormed toward the exit, workers parted silently, some staring in disbelief, others with cautious relief. The warehouse doors slammed shut behind them, leaving an eerie quiet. Michael turned to the crowd, his heart pounding but his voice steady. "I know this is a shock," he said, addressing the workers. "I came here because I suspected things were wrong, and what I found was worse than I imagined. This isn't the company I built, but we're gonna fix it, starting today." Noah clutched the headphones, his eyes wide. Ryan exchanged a glance with Martha, who raised an eyebrow but didn't speak. Michael continued, "I'm bringing in Jennifer Cole, a manager from our Easton warehouse, to take over temporarily. She's fair, and she listens. I need you to work with her and with me to turn this place around." He approached Noah, lowering his voice. "You okay?" Noah nodded, his throat bobbing. "I didn't expect this." "You shouldn't have to," Michael said. "We'll talk later. No one's docking your pay, and no one's cutting your hours." Noah's eyes glistened, but he managed a small nod. Michael turned to Ryan. "You too, Ryan. That box you dropped? No deductions. Not now. Not ever." Ryan's shoulders relaxed, a faint smile breaking through. "Thanks, Mr. Bennett." Martha finally spoke, her voice gruff. "Sounds nice, but we've heard promises before. How do we know this sticks?" Michael met her gaze. "You don't. Not yet. But I'm not leaving until it does. Give me a chance to prove it." The workers dispersed, some whispering excitedly, others skeptical. Michael headed to the supervisor's office, now empty except for a cluttered desk and a flickering computer. He logged in with his master credentials, pulling up payroll and shift records to secure evidence for the investigation. Ellie had already been notified, and HR would start collecting worker statements tomorrow. Michael knew this was just the beginning. Suspending Greg and Todd was a start, but rebuilding trust would be harder. Workers like Martha were right to doubt, and Noah's desperation wouldn't vanish overnight. But as he locked the office, he felt a flicker of hope. Riverside was broken, but it wasn't beyond saving. He'd make sure of it, for Noah, for his father, for every worker who deserved better. The Riverside warehouse felt like a different place the morning after. Michael Bennett revealed his identity and suspended Greg Sullivan and Todd Hayes. The oppressive weight of their presence was gone, replaced by a fragile mix of hope and uncertainty. Workers moved through the aisles with cautious glances, unsure if the CEO's promises of change were real or just another empty gesture. Michael, no longer hiding as Sam Turner, stood near the loading bay, his suit jacket swapped for a plain flannel to blend in while he oversaw the transition. He'd handed the reins to Jennifer Cole, an interim manager from the Easton warehouse, but he knew rebuilding trust in a place broken by years of exploitation wouldn't happen overnight. The real work proving change was possible, was just beginning. Jennifer arrived at dawn, her no-nonsense demeanor a stark contrast to Greg's bullying. A logistics veteran in her late 40s, she had a reputation for fairness and a knack for turning struggling warehouses around. She walked the floor with a clipboard, taking stock of the chaos. Broken forklifts, cluttered aisles, and a scheduling system that left workers burned out. Michael met her in the supervisor's office, now cleared of Greg's clutter, but still reeking of stale coffee. "This place is a mess," Jennifer said, scanning a stack of overdue delivery logs. "Understaffed, overworked, and equipment that belongs in a scrapyard. No wonder your customers are complaining." Michael nodded, guilt gnawing at him. Let it get this bad. What do you need to fix it?" Jennifer didn't hesitate. "New hires to fill the gaps, equipment repairs, and a scheduling overhaul. But most of all, I need the workers to trust me. They're scared, and they've got every right to be." "Start with the schedule," Michael said. "Make it fair. And I'm authorizing a food stipend $20 a week per worker. No strings attached. No one should go hungry on my watch." Jennifer raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That'll help, but trust? That's going to take time." She got to work, posting a revised schedule that balanced shifts and eliminated the erratic cuts Greg had used as punishment. Noah Carter, the young worker who'd been eating from the trash, was given steady hours, enough to support his sister, Lily. Ryan Foster, unfairly docked for a spilled box, was assigned a consistent role in sorting, leveraging his experience. Martha, the skeptical veteran, was asked to train new hires, a nod to her decades of knowledge. But not everyone welcomed the changes. Vince, a burly worker in his 30s, who'd been one of Greg's favorites, scowled at the new schedule. "This is bull," he muttered to a group of workers during a break. "Jennifer's just here to make corporate look good." Greg kept this place running. Michael, overhearing from a nearby aisle, bit his tongue. Vince's loyalty to Greg wasn't surprising. Some clung to the devil they knew, but it was a problem. Jennifer needed the team's buy-in, and Vince's influence could poison the well. Michael made a note to address it, but his immediate focus was supporting Jennifer and ensuring workers like Noah felt safe. Noah was a quiet force on the floor, scanning boxes with the same intensity, but with a flicker of relief in his eyes. During a water break, Michael approached him, keeping his tone casual. "How's the new schedule working out?" Noah wiped sweat from his brow, his voice cautious. "Better. I can actually plan for Lily's school stuff now. But is this for real? Or is it just temporary?" Michael met his gaze. "It's real, Noah. I'm not going anywhere until this place is right. And Jennifer's here to stay until we find a permanent manager." Noah nodded, but his eyes held a trace of doubt. "Greg and Todd, they're not coming back, are they?" "Not. A chance, Michael said firmly. HR's investigating them. If you've got anything to say about the loans, the deductions, tell Jennifer or Ellie Morgan from HR. You're protected. Noah's shoulders relaxed slightly, but the weight of years under Greg's thumb didn't lift easily. Michael understood. Trust was earned, not given. He moved on, checking in with Ryan, who was restacking pallets with newfound confidence. No deductions this week, Ryan said, a wry smile breaking through. Feels weird, but good. Get used to it, Michael replied. You're doing solid work. Keep it up. Martha, training a nervous new hire nearby, caught Michael's eye. Don't get cocky, she said, her tone gruff but softer than before. We'll see if this lasts. Michael smiled. Fair enough, Martha. Keep me honest. Jennifer's first day wasn't without hiccups. A delayed shipment sparked customer complaints, and the broken forklift slowed sorting, testing her patience. But she handled it with calm authority, redirecting workers to manual tasks and calling for emergency repairs. Michael watched, impressed by her ability to lead without intimidation. She didn't bark orders like Greg. She explained, listened, and adjusted. By mid-afternoon, she'd organized a team to clear a backlog of orders, with Noah suggesting a new sorting method that shaved minutes off the process. Good call, Jennifer told him, jotting it down. Noah's face lit up, a rare moment of pride, but trouble brewed beneath the surface. That evening, Michael received a call from Ellie Morgan, the HR director. We've got a problem, she said, her voice tense. A worker tipped me off. Greg's been texting some of the staff, telling them to stay quiet during the investigation. Says if they talk, they'll regret it. Michael's jaw clenched. Who's he contacting? Vince is one, Ellie said. Maybe others. I'm sending HR reps to Riverside tomorrow to take statements, but Greg's got influence. Some workers are scared. Michael hung up, his mind racing. Greg's intimidation was a direct threat to the investigation and Jennifer's efforts. He found her in the office, reviewing the day's progress. Greg's trying to silence witnesses. He told her, Vince is involved. We need to protect the workers and keep this investigation clean. Jennifer nodded, unfazed. I'll talk to the team tomorrow. Make it clear they're safe to speak. But Vince, he's trouble. I've seen his type before. Loyal to the old guard, thinks change means losing power. Handle him carefully, Michael said. We need unity, not a mutiny. The next morning, Jennifer addressed the workers before the shift, her voice firm but warm. I know things have been rough here, she said, standing in the break room. But we're building something better. If you've got concerns or if anyone's pressuring you to stay quiet, come to me or HR. No retaliation, no games. We're in this together. Noah nodded, his expression resolute. Ryan clapped quietly, a sign of support. Martha crossed her arms, skeptical but listening. Vince, leaning against the wall, smirked but said nothing. Michael watched, his gut telling him Vince was a ticking bomb. Later, he pulled Noah aside. If Greg or Vince try anything, you tell me or Jennifer, okay? Noah hesitated, then nodded. Vince was talking to some guys last night, saying Greg's suspension is temporary. Said we're stupid to trust you. Michael's fists tightened. Thanks for the heads up. Keep your eyes open. That afternoon, HR reps arrived, setting up private interviews in a corner office. Noah was among the first to speak, detailing Greg's loans and deductions, his voice steady but nervous. Ryan followed, recounting years of unfair penalties. Martha, after a long pause, shared her own stories of ignored complaints, her skepticism thawing slightly. But Vince and a few others refused to talk, their silence a shadow over the investigation. Michael stayed on the floor, working alongside workers to show commitment. He helped Ryan clear a jammed conveyor, earning a nod of respect. When a customer complaint came in about a delayed shipment, Jennifer resolved it swiftly, coordinating with drivers to prioritize the order. The warehouse was still a mess, understaffed, equipment strained, but it was moving forward. Michael implemented the food stipend, ensuring workers received vouchers for the cafeteria. Noah used his to buy a proper lunch, a small victory that hit Michael hard. No one would eat from the trash again, not on his watchdog. By the end of the week, progress was visible. Jennifer's scheduling changes reduced burnout, and Noah's sorting method boosted efficiency, earning praise from clients. Customer complaints dropped slightly, a sign the warehouse was stabilizing. But Vince's resistance lingered. During a break, Michael overheard him muttering to a coworker, "This is all a show. Greg'll be back, and Bennett's gonna ditch us." Michael confronted him quietly, away from the others. "Vince, I'm here to fix this place. If you've got a problem, talk to me or Jennifer. But stirring up trouble helps no one." Vince crossed his arms, defiant. "Greg kept us in line. You think Jennifer can handle this? You're dreaming." "Give her a chance," Michael said, his voice firm, "or you're choosing the wrong side." Vince walked off, his silence uneasy. Michael knew the investigation would expose Greg's crimes, but Vince's influence could slow the healing process. As he locked up that night, Jennifer joined him, her clipboard tucked under her arm. "We're making headway," she said, "but it's fragile. Noah and Ryan are stepping up, and even Martha's coming around. Vince, though, he's a problem." "Keep an eye on him," Michael said, "and keep pushing. I'm heading to headquarters tomorrow to deal with the bigger picture. This isn't just about Riverside, it's about the whole company." Jennifer nodded, a spark of determination in her eyes. "We'll hold the line here. Don't let corporate screw this up." Michael smiled, but the weight of her words lingered. Riverside was turning a corner, but the real battle changing Bennett Logistics from the top down was looming. He drove home, the warehouse's silhouette fading in the dusk, ready to fight. For the promise he'd made to his father, to Noah, and to every worker counting on him. Michael Bennett stood at the head of the conference room at Bennett Logistics headquarters, the polished table reflecting the tense faces of his executive team. A week had passed since he'd revealed his identity at the Riverside warehouse, suspending supervisors Greg Sullivan and Todd Hayes for their predatory practices. The memory of Noah Carter's desperation, Ryan Foster's unfair deductions, and Martha's hard-earned skepticism fueled Michael's resolve. Riverside was showing signs of recovery under Jennifer Cole's interim management, but Michael knew the rot he'd uncovered wasn't confined to one warehouse. If Bennett Logistics was to honor the promise he'd made to his father, a company that valued its workers, it needed systemic change. Today, he'd face the corporate gatekeepers. To make that happen, and he braced for a fight. The room buzzed with unease as the 8 executives settled in. Stephen Walsh, head of operations and a numbers-driven veteran, sat with his arms crossed, his jaw set. Patricia Evans, the CFO, tapped her pen, her eyes wary of anything that might strain the budget. Claire Thompson, a younger executive in charge of HR strategy, leaned forward, her notebook open, ready to engage. The others, logistics and finance heads, exchanged glances, sensing the meeting's weight. Michael didn't sit. He gripped the table's edge, his voice cutting through the murmurs. "Let's be clear," he began, his tone firm but measured. "I went undercover at Riverside because I didn't trust the reports you were sending me. Customer complaints were up. Turnover was through the roof, and you all said it was under control. What I found was worse than I imagined. Supervisors docking pay illegally, running loan schemes, and creating a culture where workers like Noah Carter had to eat from the trash to survive." A stunned silence followed. Claire's pen paused, her eyes widening. Stephen shifted, his voice gruff. Riverside? That's Greg Sullivan's warehouse, right? His efficiency metrics were solid. That's the problem, Michael said, clicking a remote to project a slide. It showed Riverside's performance data, decent output, low costs, but next to it, a list of worker complaints, cut hours, predatory loans, ignored safety concerns. Metrics don't show a supervisor bullying a worker for an accident. They don't show a kid supporting his sister on a paycheck, gutted by deductions. We've been measuring the wrong things, and it's costing us our people. Patricia frowned, her pen tapping faster. Michael, no one's defending what happened at Riverside. But going undercover? Bypassing systems? That's not how we handle issues. Michael's eyes narrowed. Systems failed, Patricia. HR never heard about Riverside because Greg controlled the flow of information. Workers were too scared to speak up. If I hadn't gone in myself, Greg and Todd would still be exploiting them. Claire nodded, scribbling notes. He's right. Our complaint system's broken if workers don't feel safe reporting. We need to fix that. Michael seized the opening, clicking to the next slide. A plan for new policies. Effective immediately, we're changing how we run this company. First, anonymous employee surveys every quarter, with results reported directly to me. If a warehouse shows red flags, we investigate, no excuses. Second, fair scheduling across all sites. No more arbitrary cuts. Third, every executive in this room will spend 1 week a year working in a warehouse or on a delivery route, starting next month. A murmur rippled through the room. Stephen leaned forward, his voice sharp. A week in the warehouses? Michael, we've got budgets to manage, contracts to negotiate. And these changes, surveys, scheduling software, investigations, they're expensive. We're already stretched thin competing with mega corporations. Can we afford this? Michael met his gaze, unflinching. Can we afford not to? We're losing workers because of places like Riverside. That means higher training costs, lower productivity, and pissed off clients. If we don't fix this, we won't have a company to budget for. Patricia sighed, setting her pen down. I get the need for change, but shaking things up this fast? Requiring executives to work shifts? It's unconventional. What's the ROI on that? It's not about ROI, Michael said, his voice rising slightly. It's about understanding the people who keep this company running. My father was a warehouse worker, Patricia. He came home with stories of bosses who treated him like garbage. I built this company to be different, and I've been failing at that. No more. Claire broke the tension, her voice steady. I think it's brilliant. If we're making decisions that affect workers, we should know their jobs. A week's not too much to ask. And the surveys? They'll catch problems before they spiral. I'm in. Stephen exhaled through his nose, unconvinced. Fine, but what about Riverside? You suspended Greg and Todd, but who's running the show now? Is it stable? Michael nodded. Jennifer Cole's taken over as interim manager. She's fixing schedules, repairing equipment, and boosting morale. But there's resistance. Some workers, like Vince, are loyal to Greg and stirring trouble. HR's investigating, and we're protecting whistleblowers. It's a start, but it's fragile. Patricia leaned back, skeptical but softening. You're betting a lot on this, Michael. If it backfires, we're looking at chaos across all 12 warehouses. Then we make sure it doesn't, Michael said, his voice resolute. We're also launching a worker advisory council with employees like Noah Carter and Ryan Foster from Riverside. They'll have a direct line to us, ensuring worker voices shape policy. No more top-down blind spots. Claire smiled, jotting it down. That's a game changer. I'll help set it up. Stephen rubbed his temples, but his resistance waned. All right, let's try it. But we need clear metrics to track progress, not just feelings. Agreed, Michael said, clicking to a final slide outlining implementation. Survey rollout in 2 weeks. Executive shift starting next month, and a budget reallocation for equipment upgrades. This isn't optional. We either lead with respect or we don't lead at all. As the meeting ended, the executives filed out, some energized, others wary. Claire lingered, catching Michael at the door. "This is the right move," she said quietly. "But Stephen and Patricia aren't wrong about the risks. You'll need to keep Riverside on track to prove this works." "I know," Michael said. "I'm heading there now." Back at Riverside, Michael shed his suit for a flannel, blending in to avoid intimidating workers. The warehouse showed progress. Jennifer's schedules gave workers predictable hours, and repaired forklifts eased the backlog. Noah was thriving, his sorting method now standard practice, earning nods from coworkers. Ryan trained new hires with confidence, while Martha, though still gruff, offered practical tips to Jennifer, a sign of cautious trust. Customer complaints had dipped, with fewer delayed shipments reported, but Vince remained a thorn. During a break, Michael overheard him. In the break room, his voice low but sharp. "Jennifer's just a corporate plant. Greg said the investigation's a sham him and Todd'll be back, and we'll all pay for snitching." Noah, grabbing a coffee nearby, shot back, "Greg's done, Vince. Jennifer's actually helping us. Why are you defending him?" Vince smirked. "You're naive, kid. Bennett's playing you. Wait till he's gone." Michael stepped in, his voice calm but firm. "Vince, if you've got issues, talk to Jennifer or HR. Spreading rumors helps no one." Vince crossed his arms, defiant. "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. This place was fine before you stirred things up." "It wasn't fine," Michael said, his eyes steady. "Workers were eating out of the trash. If you can't get behind fixing that, maybe this isn't the place for you." Vince walked off, his silence heavy. Michael knew he couldn't force loyalty, but Vince's influence was a hurdle. Later, he met Jennifer in the office, where she was reviewing HR statements. "Vince is a problem," she said, rubbing her temples. "He's not breaking rules, but he's undermining morale. And HR's got enough, Greg, and Todd's loans and deductions are documented. They're done." "Good," Michael said. "Protect Noah and the others who spoke up. And keep pushing. You're making a difference." Jennifer nodded, a faint smile breaking through. "Noah's a natural leader. Suggested a new loading system today could save hours. And Martha's warming up. We're getting there." Michael left Riverside that evening, the warehouse humming with purpose. Noah's lunch voucher sat used on a table, a small but powerful sign of change. Back at headquarters, he drafted an email to the executives, formalizing the Worker Advisory Council and scheduling Claire to oversee the surveys. Riverside was proof his vision could work, but scaling it across 12 warehouses would test his leadership. He thought of his father, whose calloused hands had taught him what work meant. This fight for Noah, for Riverside, for every worker was his to win. 6 months had passed since Michael Bennett stood in the Riverside warehouse, shedding his Sam Turner disguise and confronting supervisors Greg Sullivan and Todd Hayes for their predatory reign. The memory of that day Noah Carter's humiliation, Ryan Foster's quiet anger, Martha's guarded skepticism, and the stunned silence of workers as Michael revealed his identity as CEO remained vivid. Now, on a brisk spring morning, Michael returned to Riverside, standing outside the warehouse under a freshly painted sign that read, "Bennett Logistics, Riverside Hub." The parking lot bustled with delivery trucks, the air humming with purpose. Inside, the warehouse wasn't perfect, but it was transformed, a testament to the promise Michael had made to his father, to Noah, and to every worker who'd been failed by the system. The changes were striking. New forklifts glided smoothly through organized aisles, replacing the rattling relics that had plagued operations. Shelves were neatly stocked, thanks to Jennifer Cole's efficient inventory system. Noah Carter's sorting method, now company-wide, had slashed processing times, drawing praise from clients. The break room, once a grim space of flickering lights, now had a stocked cafeteria funded by Michael's food stipend, ensuring no worker went hungry. Employees moved with confidence, not fear, their name tags gleaming under bright lights. Michael, dressed in a simple jacket to avoid standing out, watched from the loading bay, his heart swelling with pride. Jennifer Cole, now permanent warehouse manager, stood near the sorting area, guiding a new hire with the same calm authority that had steadied Riverside during its darkest days. Her hair was tied back, her clipboard ever present, but a smile played on her lips as she caught Michael's eye. "Didn't expect you today," she said, walking over. "Checking up on us?" "Checking in," Michael corrected, grinning. "How's it holding up?" Jennifer gestured to the bustling floor. "Better than I hoped." Noah's a shift lead now. His ideas are saving us hours. Ryan's training new hires like a pro, and even Martha's stopped grumbling. Well, mostly. Michael chuckled, his gaze landing on Noah, who was directing a team with quiet confidence. The young man who'd once eaten from the trash now carried himself with purpose, his uniform fitting properly, his eyes free of the desperation that had haunted them. Ryan, nearby, showed a rookie how to secure a pallet, his easy laugh afar. Cry from the tension he'd carried under Greg. Martha, stacking crates, offered a rare nod of approval as a worker followed her advice, her skepticism replaced by cautious trust. The transformation wasn't just operational. Customer complaints had plummeted, with on-time deliveries hitting record highs. Turnover at Riverside was the lowest in the company, a stark contrast to the exodus Michael had found 6 months ago. The HR investigation had sealed Greg and Todd's fate. Their illegal deductions and loan scheme led to terminations and legal action, with full back pay issued to affected workers. Even Vince, the worker who clung to Greg's shadow, had come around after Jennifer gave him a role in safety checks, channeling his pride into something constructive. Michael joined Noah during a break, the cafeteria buzzing with chatter. "You're running this place better than I ever could," he said, handing Noah a coffee. Noah smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "I'm just trying to keep up, Mr. Bennett. Thanks for, well, everything. Lily's doing great in school now, and I'm saving up for a college fund." "You're doing more than keeping up," Michael said. "I'm putting you on the Worker Advisory Council. Your voice matters, Noah. We need it to keep this company honest." Noah's eyes widened, a mix of pride and disbelief. "Me? You're a leader," Michael cut in. "And I want you to train for logistics management. You've got the head for it." Noah swallowed, his throat bobbing. I'd like that. For Lily and for me." Across the company, Michael's reforms were taking root. The anonymous surveys had uncovered issues at 2 other warehouses, leading to swift investigations and manager retraining. The Worker Advisory Council, with Noah, Ryan, and representatives from each site, met monthly, shaping policies on scheduling and safety. Executives, including a reluctant Stephen Walsh, had begun their mandatory warehouse shifts, gaining first-hand insight into workers' challenges. Claire Thompson's HR overhaul ensured complaints reached the top, while Ellie Morgan monitored compliance. Turnover company-wide had dropped 30%, and client satisfaction was climbing, proving respect wasn't just ethical, it was good business. That evening, Michael walked the warehouse with Jennifer, the hum of machinery fading as the shift ended. "You've built something real here," he told her. "Not just a warehouse, a community." Jennifer shrugged, but her eyes shone. "The workers did it. I just gave them a chance." As they locked up, Michael's thoughts turned to his father, Jack, whose calloused hands had taught him the value of honest work. He'd started Bennett Logistics to honor that, but he'd lost his way, buried in boardrooms and blind to places like Riverside. Going undercover had been a wake-up call, forcing him to see the human cost of his disconnect. He'd failed his workers once, but never again. Back at headquarters, Michael established a scholarship fund for workers' families, with Noah's sister, Lily, as the first recipient. He committed to quarterly warehouse visits, not as a CEO, but as a listener, ensuring no worker's voice went unheard. As he stood outside Riverside, the sign glowing in the dusk, he felt a quiet certainty. This wasn't the end. It was a new beginning, one where dignity drove every decision. The story of Michael Bennett and Riverside is a powerful reminder that businesses are nothing without their people. Michael's journey from a detached CEO to a leader who walks the warehouse floor shows that true leadership demands empathy and accountability. Noah's transformation, from scavenging for scraps to leading with purpose, proves that opportunity can unlock potential. Martha's shift from skepticism to trust reflects the hard-won belief that change is possible when actions match words. Ryan's quiet strength and Jennifer's steady guidance underscore the power of giving people a chance to shine. The lessons are profound. Workplaces thrive when workers are valued, not exploited. Respect isn't a policy, it's a commitment, forged through listening, acting, and standing up for what's right. Michael's promise to his father and to every worker challenges us to build systems that lift people up, not break them down. In a world of profit-driven decisions, this story calls us to prioritize human dignity. If this tale of courage and change moved you, join the Legacy Stories channel on YouTube for more. Subscribe to discover narratives that celebrate the human spirit, from unsung heroes to transformative leaders. Hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications, because every story has the power to inspire a better world.